Community mediation is a low-cost way to resolve neighbor, tenant-landlord, consumer, workplace, and family disputes. The process I am going to present is a fundamental model that has been used by 400 mediation centers in the United States. Understand that the disputants or participants in the conflict have to voluntarily agree to participate in community mediation. The process consists of an opening and 4 phases. The opening has the following goals that mediators need to achieve. Welcome the disputants and introduce each mediator. Explain that the background of the issue has been read and that the mediation is confidential. The role of the mediators act as a neutral facilitator of communication, and solutions are not to be offered by them. They should introduce ground rules. Speak respectfully, refrain from name-calling, cursing, or shouting. It's important to highlight no interrupting the other person and be honest in your recollection of the conflict. They should also preview what will happen in the following 4 phases. For instance, the first phase is the storytelling stage, where each person will take turns telling their side and vent frustrations while the other disputant listens. The second phase occurs after the conflict is out in the open and the mediators identify key issues for the disputants to discuss with each other, while mediators help facilitate communication. The third phase is a check-in with disputants to see if they're ready to work on an agreement. And the fourth phase is the resolution stage. Disputants will create their own agreement to resolve or manage the issue. So on to phase 1. The function of this phase is to allow the disputants to tell their respective stories. As a mediator, you will want to begin with one person telling their perspective. Remind the other person that they will be able to tell their side when it's their turn. The mediator will remind them of ground rules, especially not to interrupt, because it usually is tempting in this phase. Also, the mediator explains that the disputants are to only face and speak to the mediators. Make sure their chairs are facing toward mediators. After each person tells you a portion of their story, the mediator paraphrases and summarizes, reflecting the content back to the disputant. Something like, "So what I heard you say is that you were really frustrated by the dog barking at midnight. Is there anything else you want to tell us?" After a few minutes, you'll let the other disputant explain their perspective of the conflict, giving them equal time to vent. There will be a back and forth for a while, and the mediator should be taking notes and highlighting flashpoints defined as smaller conflicts within the overall conflict that need to be highlighted and discussed further. Mediators should also check in with the disputant's feelings. "Pat, when Jess ignored you, how did that feel?" After some back and forth, the tension might decrease, and check in with them if they are ready to talk directly to each other. The mediator should, in this phase, remind the disputants to only speak to the mediators. Exhibit active listening by paraphrasing and summarizing what the disputant said. Make sure each person has equal time. Enforce the ground rules as needed. Make sure they aren't interrupting, for instance. And address and reflect the intensity of emotions that are expressed, as well as those that are just below the surface. Nonverbal communication will be important here. Ask if they are ready to speak to each other directly when the discussion is less tense and they are able to be respectful. So during a 5 to 10 minute break, mediators should look at various issues, flashpoints that need to be addressed. They should prioritize the importance of the flashpoints that resurface in phase 1 and prepare to address them in phase 2. Phase 2. If they confirm that they are willing to speak directly to each other, the mediators will have the disputants turn their chairs towards each other. They will be instructed that they are to only speak to each other and now not speak to the mediators. They may have to be gently reminded during this phase. One mediator should ask a disputant a question that addresses an issue of high importance to the process. For instance, "Pat, could you explain what you were experiencing at the time Jess felt ignored?" Followed by, "Jess, can you repeat back to Pat what you had just heard?" "Jess, how does it feel to know that Pat was feeling overwhelmed at the time you felt like you were being ignored?" Mediators should try to facilitate communication by identifying the issues that need to be addressed, getting the disputants to communicate directly to each other, asking each disputant to paraphrase and summarize what the other has said, ask questions to explore how each disputant is feeling about certain issues, reflect the intensity of those feelings back to the disputants, enforce the ground rules, and then return to phase one if new issues emerge and need to be addressed, especially if the disputants appear to become tense or emotional about an issue. If you get through phase 1 and 2, phase 3 is generally the briefest stage of the mediation. This is a check-in with the disputants. If they get to this point, it is an accomplishment. The mediator should congratulate them for getting to this phase of the mediation. Many disputants do not successfully reach this point. Ask them to really check in with how they are feeling. Ask them if there are any other issues or flashpoints that need to be addressed. If something else is identified, you may have to return to phase 1 if it is serious enough. And lastly, if there is nothing more to address and each disputant appears calm and the tension has been diffused, ask them if they are ready to create a solution to the issue. And if they are, we move on to phase 4. In phase 4, we create an agreement to manage or resolve the conflict. The mediator should explain to the disputants that they are to create the solution themselves, and mediators are only to help the process along but not offer solutions. They should also begin by having the disputants brainstorm and be creative by thinking outside of the box about the ideas they put forth. Also, explain that they should not evaluate ideas that come out of the brainstorming process immediately. As they identify potential solutions, the mediators should write them down on a board for all to see. And then by taking turns and asking each disputant questions like, would this work for you? What would we have to change to make this work for you? After the process, you should read the agreement, ask each, what would happen if this agreement wasn't followed? What would be the ramifications? And then hopefully, have them sign the agreement and congratulate them.